Hey there. I like this angle here. So I'm going to wait for a few people to jump on before we start. And I know not everybody can be on here at this time, but it just works for me Wednesdays because I don't usually have a client at 12 on Wednesdays. At least for the next 6 weeks anyway. I'm going to try to keep it open. But if you don't catch this video, that I'm going to actually upload them onto YouTube so that you can catch them there. So I'm pulling up the Bible study that I sent you guys. So I hope you guys got a chance to read the study that was in the email. A lot of people didn't get it because it goes to your spam. So I would just really encourage you to check your spam folder because sometimes it can go there. But the first lesson was actually called Everything Under the Sun. And I sent it out Sunday at 5. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about and go over today. And I had one question, but what we're going to do every week is I'm going to make a post and I'm going to encourage anybody to ask questions that they have. And then I'll try to answer the questions best I can on the live. So Monday you get the Bible study to read. Tuesday I ask if there's any questions. And then Wednesday we have a discussion on Facebook. And when I say discussion, it's just me talking. But you can ask me questions on the bottom here. Or you can ask me questions on Tuesday before, so I have a chance to kind of look over them and kind of get an answer. Am I always going to have an answer? No. So I also wanted to explain kind of how I do Bible study. If you're looking for something that's super in-depth for, I don't know, theology, word study, that kind of stuff, I don't really dig into it for these purposes. The reason I'm doing the Bible study, when I'm doing it, is so that we can apply it to our lives, right? Because I feel like, that's what the Bible's for, is so that we can take this wisdom and this knowledge and apply it to our lives. It's all well and great to know theology and know scripture backwards and forwards, but if you don't know how to apply it to your life, then there's no point in even knowing it. It's kind of how that's kind of how I approach doing the study, right? It's just kind of how do we take this and apply it to our lives, right? So I asked you guys to read Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and 2, and a couple of people, it's funny, what they said was, oh my gosh, Ecclesiastes is so depressing. And especially the first 2 chapters can seem that way. And it can really seem that way if you're not like looking at it from a different lens, right? So I always encourage people to look at things from a different perspective. So Ecclesiastes, just a little background, was written by Solomon, and Solomon is the son of King David, and King David was the king of Jerusalem, and then Solomon became the king of Jerusalem after his father's death. And Solomon was very wise. He was very rich, and he had everything he could possibly have, including like 600 concubines and 300 wives or something like that. So I'm not going to get into all the how did God allow that kind of to happen. They can still use him as a king, and just an example of that God can use anybody. He wrote 3 books in the Bible. He wrote Song of Solomon, he wrote Proverbs, and then he wrote Ecclesiastes. So the way that I understand it is that Proverbs, Song of Solomon, was written during his young formative years where he's full of passion. And if you read Song of Solomon, it's like a very passionate book. Then he wrote Proverbs, which is a wisdom book about just all the different little nuggets of wisdom, right? So if you read Proverbs, you'll understand it's just a lot of different wisdom stuff. And then toward the middle of his life, or towards the middle end maybe, he wrote Ecclesiastes. And Ecclesiastes was just kind of like him looking at his life and going, what's it all for, right? Why are we here? What's our purpose? What's the meaning of doing all these things if, we don't, get any fulfillment out of it, right? So that's just a little bit of the background of Ecclesiastes. And sorry, I was getting Somebody was trying to call me. So it says there's a lot of different high points in Ecclesiastes. If you guys know, there is a, what's it called? The Beatles song, The Time for Everything. Like Ecclesiastes chapter 3 is about the whole thing about there's a season for this, a time for dying, time to be born, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of what the book is famous for. And we're going to get into that next week. But for these purposes, we're going to get into, sorry, I'm trying to send somebody a message right here to let them know I'm not available. On live right now in my group. Okay. So Ecclesiastes 1 and 2. So what I wrote here in the Bible study that I sent you was about being in nature and how that really just kind of speaks to me and everything. But, you know, we have a longing inside of us. All of us have a longing. And we always try to get these longings fulfilled through like achievements, through relationships, and through stuff, right? We always think that if we have this one thing, we're going to feel better. If we accomplish this one goal, we're going to feel better. If we just can make this one relationship work, it will feel better, right? There's all these different things that we think that will make us feel better and fulfilled if we do them. And a lot of us, including myself, have achieved a lot of things in our lives. Like I've gone to college, I've gotten my master's degree, I've gotten my black belt in karate, I've like done all these things in my life. But really none of those things have really fulfilled me like I thought they would, right? And that's kind of what this book is about, all right? So one of the questions that somebody asked that I wanted to answer, and I really encourage you guys to ask questions because that will help me to like kind of direct this live a little bit more. So the person said, I enjoy my work but I struggle to fulfill my dreams, right? So I think what she was saying was that she has a job that she likes, and we were talking about toil because in chapters 1 and 2, he talked about everything being, you know, toiling and laboring under the sun, right? So she's saying she likes her job, but she struggles to fulfill her dreams. So my answer to that question would be that maybe that your work is more fulfilling than what you think it is. Maybe, you know, you are fulfilling your dream by doing the work that you're doing. Like, have you ever considered that, right? And the problem is maybe the longing for a dream is because we have a spiritual longing that cannot be fulfilled on this earth, right? There's a little word study I did on labor, and it's from the word Hebrew word called amal. And it's labor in Ecclesiastes has been in there 23 times. It says to toil to the point of exhaustion and yet experience little or no fulfillment in your work. It carries with it the idea of grief, misery, frustration, and weariness, right? So in the garden, you know, we were working, we were doing all these things, but we never saw it as work until after the fall of man, right? And then after the fall of man, God kind of cursed us with, you know, the work, right? And all the heaviness of that, right? Because of the longing that we have really for God. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but maybe your work that you're struggling with, or maybe you're not fulfilling your dreams that you're struggling with, maybe you're already doing those. And, you know, not that I'm saying don't ever follow your dreams, because I think we should all like do things that we enjoy. But the idea is it's not the end all be all. And I'm going to get into all that kind of in the rest of this. So chapter 1 is he just goes into everything is meaningless. Wisdom is meaningless. This one part says what is crooked cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. He says, I said to myself, look, I have increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I've experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly, but I learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow, and the more knowledge, the more grief, right? So we live in an age where we're constantly bombarded by information. We get on Facebook, we get on Google, we get on all these different places where we can get information. And we think that having more information is going to fulfill us, that it's going to make us feel better, but it really doesn't, right? And we're always looking for something new. You know, there's so many different things out there, especially if you're on social media, that vie for our attention. You know, I'm going to try this new program. I'm going to try this new, you know, product. Because this will be the thing that makes me feel good, right? This coaching program will make me feel good. This weight loss program will be the end all be all. This career will be the end all be all. We're always searching for something new to make us feel complete, right? And so I want to read you this. This kind of goes into chapter 2 about pleasures being meaningless. It says, man wants something new, but why? Because everything in this world ultimately brings weariness, and people long for something to distract them or deliver them. The world provides nothing new. So in our search, we're always trying to fill that void and that longing that we have. You know, we're always trying to find something new, a group to be a part of, a relationship to make us feel better. Like all of these different things, and none of those things really ever bring us the fulfillment that we think, right? Especially when you get to be my age. I'll be 50 in September. I keep saying that because I think I'm having issues with being 50. But when you get to be closer to my age and maybe even closer to 60, you start to realize that all of the things that you've tried to accumulate over your life really don't matter that much. And we're going to get into what really matters, you know. So the first 2 chapters of Ecclesiastes tell of the teacher's own experience of despair and meaningless. The life described in his autobiographical section resembles that of King Solomon and the rest of the book. The teacher examines the world around him to see whether others have found answers to the life under the sun. To his disappointment, he finds the same pattern repeated over and over again. So what you'll see a lot in this book is the word under the sun, and what that, or the phrase under the sun, and what that means is that, you know, under the sun is everything on this earth. But when he talks about above the sun, he's talking about heaven. And as I stated in my in the Bible study here, is the idea is to try to make some kind of connection while we're still here between above the sun and under the sun. Like, where is that place where we can connect with God, where we can try to be fulfilled while we're waiting for the rest of creation to be redeemed? Because that's really what we're waiting for, right? We're waiting for creation to be redeemed. We're waiting for our bodies to be redeemed. And when I say redeemed, I don't mean it's like some kind of like prize. I mean, we're going to be made new. And God has put that longing in our hearts to be made new. But we always try to make ourselves new, right? Especially when you're in midlife. When you get to be my age, it's like, man, I better start doing all these things now, or I'm not going to be able to do them. You know, I'm going to miss out. You know, like I want to travel, or things I want to do, you know, before I get really old. And it's like, you know, that's a longing that I have inside of me that cannot be fulfilled by anything that this world has to offer me. I shared in the Bible study, it says Solomon's expression with his dissatisfaction with the meaningless and futility with everything under the sun allows him and to us to lament, to express our hearts to God so that we can begin to inject a new perspective into our hearts and minds. So, you know, even though the first 2 chapters of Ecclesiastes seem really depressing and like, oh my gosh, it's all meaningless, toil under the sun, it's an expression because it's a wisdom book. It's almost like poetic. And God wants us to express how we feel to him. That's what he's there for, right? He doesn't want us to stay there. And the bottom line is when we constantly live life and perceive life at one dimension, only under the sun, then it is meaningless. Because it's like, I hear people say it all the time, being a counselor. Well, all there is to do, you just work and die. You know, you work, live, and die. That's all there is to it. But as believers, we have hope that that's not all there is. Like, we have hope that there's more to the story, right? So some of the discussion questions, and then I'm gonna talk about some of the discussion questions and then go over just a few points. If you have any questions, just ask. I don't think anybody's asking any questions at this point. So one of the questions is, where do you see evidence of despair among people today? Well, gosh, look where we're living at today. I mean, between the virus and the civil unrest that's going on, there's a lot of despair going on, right? And that right there speaks to how out of control, how much control, less, we don't have any control over what happens, right? And that things of this world, we can put all of our stock into people and things of this world. And at the end of the day, it could all fall apart, you know? So there's a lot of despair among people. I mean, I've been in a lot of despair lately about what's going on, right? So I think we can all agree and relate to each other that we are in despair because we're in this place of under the sun, right? Do you ever feel like your life is the same old, same old? How does that make you feel, and what do you do in response? Well, for me, when I feel like my life is the same old, my go-to and my habit is to, oh, I'm going to go try this new program, or, oh, I'm going to change this, or I'm going to change that. Because I have a longing for something new, and I think that if I do that new thing, it's going to bring me pleasure, but it really doesn't, because my longing for something new is a new, a new body, a new creation, a new world, right? That's really the longing that God's put in us. It says, what kind of moral issues have come about due to all of our quest for more knowledge, such as scientific discoveries and advances in human knowledge? So let's be honest. There's been a lot of scientific discoveries and knowledge that has helped us immensely, but a lot of the knowledge that we have has caused a whole lot of problems. Let's talk about cloning. Let's talk about like the virus. There's so many different things that have happened because of our knowledge. But because of that sin that was committed in the garden, Eve wanted to know more. And we have just been constantly in this battle of wanting to know more. Why? We want to know more because we think if we know more, we're going to feel better. We're going to fill a void. It's not going to happen. And we're going to talk about how to fill that void here in a little bit, right? But the bottom line is the world provides nothing new. The world keeps turning. The world keeps doing what it's doing. And we keep trying to make it better, and we keep trying to make things better. But all the while, God is in control and asking us to trust him, right? And to think about, how do we meet that place between above the sun and under the sun? How do we do that while we're here in this in-between place, So a couple points to just kind of close up. Life is good, but it is a gift of God, right? So we have to understand that, life is good if we really choose to look at the simple things in our life, the simple relationships, the people in our life, the day-to-day stuff. We have to turn our perspective into being more above the sun, or an eternal perspective, as I like to say, and say, what is this, how can I look at this from an eternal perspective? Because then we're seeing it from the God perspective, right? The second point is life doesn't get easier if you try to run away from it. Both the workaholic and the alcoholic are running away from the reality and living on substitutes. And one day the bubble of illusion will burst, right? So we can't run away from the fact that there's going to be problems in this world under the sun. Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble, but I've overcome the world. And that's where we have to put our hope in. People that work a lot, that are busy a lot, that have drug problems, alcohol problems, food problems, whatever it is, whatever busyness they have, it's trying to escape from the problems of the world. But in Solomon's case, a lot of what he was saying is, I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees. I made reservoirs. He did all of these things. He says, I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. See, he was trying to keep himself busy and run away from the negative feelings he was having and the longings he was feeling by staying busy, right? And we all do that. The last point is wisdom and experience will not solve every problem, right? We think that if somebody's smart, We think that they have a lot of experience, that these problems are going to be solved. Like Elon Musk is the hero of the day lately, right? Elon Musk has all the answers, or President Trump, or whoever it is. Like, we think that all these human people have the answers, but they don't, right? Because they're human and they're under the sun. It's only God who has all the wisdom, right? And we have to just learn to trust him, right? So I'm going to kind of close this out with this quote from T.S. Eliot. It says, all our knowledge brings us closer to ignorance. And it's by T.S. Eliot. So I guess my challenge would be, as we're going through this study is, how do you see yourself toiling? And how have you found, and toil, what I mean toil is like laboring and hustling and doing all the things. How do you see yourself toiling, and what are you really getting out of that? You have to ask yourself, what are you trying to fill, right? When I shared the Bible study, the first opening part of what I shared about was how I really connect with God outside in nature. It's like my church. It's like my sanctuary. I truly believe that there's moments that we can really experience God's presence if we just take the time to do it and stay away from the busyness and the distractions, right? But that takes change. It takes lifestyle change. It takes habit change. It takes commitment. It takes being able to sit still and be quiet and listen for God before we start doing all the busyness, right? Kay says, I feel like I'm constantly swallowed by the responsibilities of being a mom and a wife. Yeah, especially for you got so many, little guys, and you kind of lose yourself. I remember being a young mother and a wife and losing myself. And then when my kids grew up, I was like, oh my God, now what? Now what do I do with myself? So I would really encourage you, Kay, to just, find the things that bring you joy personally. Try to find time for those things and ask for help. Because those are two of the things I wish I would have done when I was a young mother, like finding things for myself and asking for help. Because then you come back to your kids, you come back to your husband, you come back to your relationships more filled, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. I tell people that all the time, right? And from this Bible study standpoint, being a mom and a wife, we can get caught up in that busyness too. Let's face it. We can get a lot of our identity from that. And it's not that it's a bad thing to be a mom and a wife or a husband or whatever. It's not that any of those things are bad things, but we're never going to get all of our fulfillment from any of those things, from any relationship, from any job, from anything else other than from God, right? So I think just taking time out and just spending time with him, feeling his presence, being quiet, allowing yourself to just sit in the quietness of nature. It's hard. I know it's hard. I think that's part of why lockdown has been so hard for so many people, is because we've been forced to stay home and be with ourselves and be with our thoughts and not be busy. And, they always say idle time is the devil's handiwork, or devil's, I don't know, something like that. But if we take that idle time and we just kind of present ourselves before God, God has to be enough. Now, I know it's hard because I think we're in that, the veil hasn't been lifted where we completely see, God right here where he's at. But at the same time, like, we have to make an effort to be in relationship with him and feel his presence. Kids' school makes me really anxious because it's so overwhelming to homeschool them all. The balancing act. Oh my, I didn't realize you homeschooled them all, because how will I find the time for me? Yeah. And I think that's where you have to ask for help. I think you have to find, other Christian women or people in your family to give you a break. You have to ask your husband to give you a break. You gotta, you have to homeschool thanks to COVID. Yeah, a lot of people are in that same boat right now. And it's concerning for me as a counselor, because, a lot of parents have to work, or they don't know how to do school with their kids, and it's very stressful, so I think if I could give any advice to the people that have to stay home and do school with their kids right now, I would say try to rely on other moms, try to rely on other parents to help each other, right? Don't feel like you have to go all at this alone. Try to find other people that are in your kid's school district or whatever, or a homeschool group or some kind of group that can kind of help you navigate all that. And the other thing I would say is, like, if you're going to homeschool, like, do your own thing. If you have to stay home and do school, I would just do your own thing. You don't have to do like what the school's telling you to do, you know? So, you know, it's just, it's tough. It's, you know, we're really facing a lot of really tough times right now. So my heart goes out to all you guys that have to do that, because, man, it's tough. And I've got a lot of teachers that I have as clients, and they're really having a difficult time as well. So, you know, but bottom line, in regard to the Bible study, like, I think, you know, if you guys can just make the time for God a priority and allow him to fill that longing that you have, you will start to see the benefit from that. And maybe all the other questions that you have about your problems and things that you're struggling with will be answered. Because they're never answered, as Solomon very clearly pointed out, they're never answered in doing things and doing more and trying to be achievement oriented and success oriented and all of that, right? So, you know, that would be my encouragement to you, is just try to take some time and just spend time outside, spend time in the Word, spend time with other people praying, you know, whatever that is that you need to do so that you can kind of fill that void and fill that longing, you know. So that's about a half an hour. So I think I'm going to stop there. I so appreciate all you guys that jumped on. I hope this was helpful. I wasn't really sure exactly what I was going to talk about. This book right here. It's called Be Satisfied. It's been really helpful for me to study this book. So, you know, if you want to pick it up and read it, you can. If not, this is kind of what I'm using as my reference to kind of go through the study. I'm going to be sending out the other Bible study. I'm scheduled to send it out Sunday, and then I'm going to pre-record a video on it because we're going on vacation on Saturday. So I'm going to pre-record it, and then I'll upload the video in this group. But I still want you to ask questions, because I can still answer the questions in the video. So, you know, I'm probably going to upload the video like, I don't know, Friday or Saturday morning or something like that. Or I'm going to finish it. But, you know, if you have questions, try to answer them, ask them before then. But what we're going to do is we're going to be doing Ecclesiastes 3 and 4 next week. So I'm going to try to break it up into 12 weeks. I mean, 6 weeks, not 12 weeks, 6 weeks. And we're doing 2 chapters a week. They're pretty short, you know. And my hope is that what you get out of this is just, you know, how do we kind of stop the striving, and how can we kind of start just being in the moment and, you know, really, you know, just, you know, feeling God's presence and just letting him fill that void as much as we possibly can. So thanks. Good to see you guys. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.